Good afternoon, Kyoto. Or good afternoon. Oh my goodness. Good afternoon, Tokyo. I have been in so many places in the last few days, I'm getting all mixed up. Forgive me. Good afternoon. First of all, I want to express my condolences and my sorrow at the terrible catastrophe that Japan experienced in the north last year in March of 2011. I bring you from Canada our respect and the inspiration that we have drawn from your courage, from your tenacity, and from your resilience. So blessings from Canada to Japan. What I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about my work as a social entrepreneur as it relates to people with disabilities, but the underlying theme of my message today is that what is good for people with disabilities is good for everyone. All right, we'll try and make that work now. We have so much technology here today. The organization that I helped found 25 years ago is called PLAN. And I will tell you some detail about what we do, how we work, and how we have attempted to take our concepts and our solutions to scale so that they are spread to benefit many people around the world. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I come from Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, and I'm walking along the beach. I live very close to the sea in Vancouver, and I'm walking along the beach with my wife, Vicky, who is on the right, and one of my 4 daughters, Liz, or Elizabeth, who is one of the reasons that I got myself involved in the world of disability. Liz is my teacher, and I like to consider that she has made an honest man out of me. I seldom describe Liz according to her disability. She would be very upset with me if I mentioned that she had Down syndrome. She is an artist. She has graduated from Art College in Vancouver. She has an artist studio. She loves to paint in watercolors and in oils, and lately she has become an expert at using iPad to create art, and just last week she sold 4 of her iPad paintings, so she's very proud. In our organization, and for many social enterprises that you will encounter, you will learn that we will provide you with statistics, but only if we tell you a story. So in our work, we have this motto: no statistic without a story, no story without a statistic. So I'm going to start this afternoon here in Tokyo, I get the right place, by telling you a story. I'm going to tell you about these 2 men. The man in the reddish-pink shirt on your right, his name is Gordon. And the very first time I met Gordon in his living room, he walked out of the room on me. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He wouldn't speak to me. He wouldn't have anything to do with me. And I didn't understand why, until eventually I came to learn that Gordon was a man who carried a file that was about this thick around with him. And in this file were diagnoses, assessments, tests, and descriptions of everything that Gordon could not do. This was a file folder that destroyed Gordon. This was a file folder that emphasized to the world, that emphasized to his parents, and that emphasized to Gordon that he was worthless, that he was not capable of doing anything. And so when he looked at me, I think he smelled a social worker. And it was social workers who had filled that file with everything that he could not do. And so I think it was very good for him to walk out of the room on me. He was being very smart. On the other hand, his father's name is Chuck, which is a nickname or a short form for Charles. Charles was desperate. Charles's wife had just passed away. He had no other children except Gordon, and there were no other family members living in the greater Vancouver area. So as Chuck got older, he could rely on no other family member to support his son, particularly as Chuck was getting old and he was worried, what would happen to my son when I die? So Chuck, despite the objections of Gordon, who would have nothing to do with me, Chuck was desperate and he said, I would like some help from your organization. And one of our key insights is that it doesn't matter, and it didn't matter how much money Chuck had to leave for his son, and it didn't matter how well his legal affairs were arranged. What mattered most, that there were people in Gordon's life who loved him, who cared for him, who were in relationship with him. And Chuck, the father, knew that there was no one except him in Gordon's life. So he asked us if we would organize a personal network for Gordon. And this is our specialty, so we agreed. And Gordon's network is the longest one, which is why I chose to tell you this story today. It is now over 20 years old, his network. It's survived and thrived in that period of time. In order to organize this network, we hired a woman by the name of Martha, who we call a facilitator or a community connector. And she has 3 skills or 3 characteristics that are very important in organizing or creating networks, and that often you don't learn when you're in university. The first skill is that she was a very good listener. The second skill was she was very hospitable. She knew how to welcome people, how to introduce them, how to make sure everybody was comfortable. Her third skill was that she was well connected in her community. She knew people who knew people. She knew her community well. And this proved to be extremely important in working with Gordon, because Gordon was so shy, his eyes were so downcast that he seldom spoke. And this facilitator, this woman, she spent many months, many hours with Gordon, just watching, listening, being with him, gaining his trust, until one day she came into our offices completely excited. She says, I've got it. I've got it. We said, you've got what? She says, it's horses. It's horses. Gordon wants to ride horses. Gordon wants to own a horse. Gordon wants to go on cattle drives. Gordon wants to be a cowboy. So after many, 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 many years of nobody listening to Gordon, somebody paid attention long enough to discover Gordon's true, heartfelt passion. So now the second skill of our facilitator kicked in. She had a friend who owned a horse at a stable at the mouth of the Fraser River. The mighty Fraser River flows into the sea in Vancouver. There are many stables, and this friend of hers had a horse at one of the stables, and she said, Gordon, you can come and visit my horse. And so Gordon went down on a Sunday afternoon and met Big Bob, her horse. And lo and behold, it was like love at first sight. Gordon took to horses as if he had been with them all his life. He was so gentle with the horses responded so well to him, that the owner of the horse said, Gordon, if you like my horse so much, why don't you come down and visit him whenever you want? And Gordon decided to take her up on the offer. In fact, very soon, there wasn't a day that went by that Gordon wasn't visiting the horse. Gordon went every single day to visit the horse, to groom the horse. He liked shoveling the manure out of the stables. And this came to the attention of the owner of the stables. And the owner of the stables noticed that Gordon had a special talent with the horses. When they were around him, they were quieter, they were calmer, and it was easy for everyone to be with the horses. So he gave Gordon a job. Now, I want to remind you that in that file on Gordon, they said Gordon would always be uncooperative, that he had behavior problems, that he was incapable of working, that he would never succeed, that he was not a good listener. And Gordon had been offered a job. In fact, he took his job so seriously that he ended up moving out of the house with his father and getting an apartment, a small apartment, close to the bus line so he could get down to the stables and be on time for work every day. And Gordon now is a fixture in the community, in the suburb of Kerrisdale in Vancouver, where everybody knows him as the Horse Whisperer. Here is Gordon with the horse, Big Bob.